and welcome to another episode of Sonic Talk. It's number 322. We're live on another extremely hot day in the UK. I can't believe how hot it still is, weeks later. But it's great, although not great when you have technical difficulties, which is what I've just had. And my chat room just went down just before the show, which was a bit problematic. So I hope the people watching are being able to get this. I think the chat room is there, although I won't be able to include them in the show because I couldn't get my client working. But never mind. Enough of my difficulties. You can see I'm red and flustered. But welcome. Today is, apart from being another hot day, it's actually the day after the day that Logic X finally dropped. This is 4 years in the coming for a major update. It's probably going to dominate the show's topic, so if you're not interested in Logic or Apple or anything, then you might want to go elsewhere for your summer afternoon midweek entertainment. But right now, this is where we are. So we do have Mr. Non-Eric on the show. He's joining us via, I'm not sure what it is, but it's not his usual thing because he's also streaming simultaneously to his own website, which is...
Trying, which I haven't got it up and running yet, unfortunately, Nick. But I can't sort of stop your show for that long, so I'll just give a verbalized review of my enthusiastic moments with the Logic update, which is exactly the opposite of what I expected. Yes.
Interesting. All right. Well, I'm going to
No, not really. No, not that. Maybe not even right. I knew, or we all were afraid that it could be a garage band kind of plus sort of thing, just like what happened with the Final Cut Studio and Final Cut X. And in a way, that's exactly what happened. But instead of criticizing it, because there's no I think technical advances in the background, I think they haven't even touched the audio engine. We still pan minus 63 to the left and plus 64 to the right. So we're still in the dark ages of MIDI resolution in the mixer. But everything else around it, the workflow together with this iPad app gives me everything I wanted. Now I have all these nice touch instruments at my fingertips and quickly, and I can play strange stuff, like crazy chords on the fly, and then treated everything just like it would be an iPad thing, but without the drawbacks.
Integrated. Can I come back to you in a second? I still have to introduce our other guests, but that's a great little, I think we could call that a tease. That's Mr. Non-Eric from musotalk.de with his initial thoughts. Back to him in a second. Also want to say hello to Mr. Dave Spears from GeForceSoftware.com, who is there probably in an equally steamy environment, except he's got more equipment that generates more heat than I have. That's why I went for LED lights.
Yes.
You're very quiet, Dave.
I'm contemplating going. Am I? Right,
yes.
That makes a change. Let me just try my microphone. Is that
there?
Better?
That's much better. Thank you very much.
Okay. I was contemplating leaving because I don't really have an awful lot to contribute to this Logic X conversation.
Well, it's interesting because they actually they just dropped it without telling anybody that it was coming, really, including developers by the sound of it. So you're as much surprised as we are, I guess.
Well, we did have a couple of tip-offs from people who should have known better. So we were kind of forewarned in a lot of it.
Okay.
But we didn't know when. That was the really interesting thing. We knew that there was a couple of things that we needed to look at. But okay. Right, I'll be quiet now.
Thank you. And also we got Mr. Mark Tinley over there, who I believe also has purchased said software. Mark Tinley, likebeing.com, creative thinker.
I did. I looked on the Apple website and I saw that it could tune vocals. And I thought, well, I've got a session today and somebody coming over, so I thought I'll download it.
Nice.
And you know what? It's still downloading things. I don't know what it's doing, but it's just every time I have actually managed to get it up and running and managed to click on a few things and try a couple of things. But every time I go to do anything, I made the fatal error of clicking on this little icon that said Adrian, I think. And Adrian is a drummer, and it decided that it was going to go and download about 2 gigabytes of drum loops from this guy called Adrian. So, and every time you just got to not click on anything like that, otherwise.
It
does look good. I am completely and utterly miffed about the upgrade path because I've been a Logic user since version 1 and I really think I ought to be rewarded, but then it's so bloody cheap that it's kind of you know what, maybe we should just reward everyone on the planet with a cheaper
Yeah,
price.
you could look at it either way, can't you? Whether that's the case or whether it's not.
Yeah.
But it's interesting. I mean, just as a quick, do a sort of quick intro. I should also point out that we've got a sponsor of the show. This is Isotope. We ran a competition last week. We've got a winner this week for Stutter Edit, and we will have. Oops, no, not that one. Another version of Stutter Edit to give away. So stay tuned. You'll find it somewhere amongst our chats. So you have to listen to the show to find out what the competition is and all those things. But yes, Logic 10 or Logic X. It's on the face of it, there seemed to be less. The default position was, it's just going to be a bunch of uninteresting things. But actually, I've been looking. There's a really good video from a guy called David Earl, who's called SF Logic Ninja. He does a load of training stuff for Mac Pro Video, and he's done like a 20-minute overview, and it really does kind of open your eyes to what they've done. The thing that looks really interesting, and I think is probably massively underplayed, is this track stacks feature. Now, I'm pretty sure, Non-Eric, you've had a chance to look at that, because that's almost like the equivalent of creating racks, isn't it, effectively, and sort of devices, and you're able to macro control them. Am I right in saying that?
I didn't touch that at all yet.
I've caught you out. What have you had a look at then? What is it that's kind of immediately impressed you with it? Because you immediately downloaded it. I don't have anything running Mountain Lion, so I'm not prepared to upgrade my computer and pay to just to be first to review it. So
okay, that's what I did.
Well, tell us what happened.
So, no, the big thing that really was interesting for me, because in the last couple of weeks I've been struggling, with the idea of doing a full-blown production on the iPad. I discovered that Cubase's and all the other plugins and recording software don't even know anything about plug-in or latency compensation or anything like that. So audio bus is just a stupid cable, and that would only change the minute that inter-app audio from Apple will be in iOS 7. So I thought, do I really want to go back to the dark ages of music production just to be able to use these great, touch control devices and nice sliders and virtual keyboards and chord strumming things, whatever it is, That's the part that intrigues me about the iPad. But it's underpowered and underdeveloped in many areas. But it could be a great control panel for Logic. And that's when it comes in. And that was the point that was interesting to me, is to find out how well will this work. And it's amazing what they've done. They put the whole sort of GarageBand functionality plus extras into the iPad controller that then sort of controls the host software in a way that you can stay within the iPad environment but use your regular software instruments and whatever you like. So that's basically the best of both worlds, this solution, because I have
I mean, one thing I would say, and I think that this is something that they missed a trick, is that what they should also have done is created a conduit in software so that you can basically, like you say, this interactive streaming. So you could just take, unless I'm misunderstanding what you say, allow you to be able to run all of these great instruments on your iPad, but have a way of streaming that straight into Logic, audio digitally, without having to come in and out and mess about. And you just, so maybe you'll have to go into low latency mode, and that would be the killer app. But I don't. That's the thing I think that would have really sealed it, and it would have had people flocking to Logic in droves, and people they'd make lots of sales based on that. Maybe that's what they're working on for a future update, because I think that could kill it. Because essentially, as far as I understand it, with the iPad remote, it gives you access to, like you say, the instrument interfaces, interesting ways, chord strumming, and also these smart controls, which, if you're using track stacks, which are kind of like groups of tracks, you can create sort of high-level macros and then assign them through the iPad and what have you. So you get this extra bit of control. That's, as I understand, how the iPad has been integrated, right?
So should I throw my auto mix away then? My little Novation thing. I don't need that anymore, do I?
Not really, because you can assign any parameter on any soft instrument or plugin to one of those macro panels on the iPad. Yes.
And then you can assign any of those macros to any incoming controller data. So it's very quick
Yeah, it's basically. I mean, it feels like if you're familiar with GarageBand,
yeah,
and a couple of the synths, then it just feels like yes, it's actually works, has a little bit more features than GarageBand, but these features are actually just they are performed by Logic X on a real computer with software instruments that you choose based on technology that is at least now gives us input latency compensation and recording compensation and all these little neat tricks, and you have enough horsepower to run your relab, lexicon, reverb. So I've got all the benefits of the functionality of the interface.
Right.
I'm using a kind of consumery, kind of funny but great to control and interface on my iPad, which is
it's the missing link. One thing, can you control third-party plugins and effects via the iPad?
Yes, sure.
Ah, okay, that's neat. Mr. Dave Spears, you've been quiet. I know you use Logic, and I know you perhaps had a bit of a heads up. You use Logic. Have you taken the plunge? Have you had a look at this? I mean, does it mean? I'm sure it probably doesn't mean, apart from the 32-bit, 64-bit plugin thing, which is another sort of fairly major burnt bridge, perhaps, in this update.
Yeah, they're quite good at that.
Yeah.
No, I haven't personally. Obviously, the guy that we've got doing support, he did it. He downloaded it. To be honest, my working environment is still 10.6.7. That's the majority of my stuff, and then all I do is use 10.7 and 10.8 for testing.
Right.
But I need that backwards compatibility for us and a load of artists and stuff like that. So I'm not likely to make this jump personally soon, but obviously it was a necessity for us.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing I could do, I'd have to buy 10.8.4 and install it on a spare disc, and then I'd be able to check it out. That might be what I end up. But then again, I'm going to end up, it's going to end up costing me like 250 quid to review Logic, which I'm not particularly feeling the love for that so much. But I'm glad that Non-Eric has. So
yeah.
What else have you got there for us, Mr. Non-Eric? Is there anything else that has particularly jumped out at you?
No, I thought I was already boring you.
No, not at all. Not at all. I mean, the things that I was looking at, again, this brilliant, if you get a chance to look at it, it's David Earl's Logic Ninja Track Stacks. The Track Stacks thing really does interest me a lot, actually.
In a second, I should have the video stream up. Give me 1 second. I have the video stream up on musertalk.de. So people who are in the live show can then maybe take a look.
All right, okay. And is this something that's okay? You tell me if it.
Shall I just talk for a second then?
Yes, please do.
Yes, please.
So when I loaded this thing onto my computer, I was really seriously contemplating using it for a session today, because whenever I've upgraded from Logic before, it's very seamless and you just go from one thing to another thing. So from 6 to 7, pretty straightforward. Everything is in a different place, but the software works in much the same way. 7 to 8, same kind of deal. 8 to 9, same kind of deal. I just loaded 9 on my machine and posh, I was able to do everything straight away. But this 64-bit plugin thing and dropping the support for 32-bit plugins has killed off nearly half my plugins, I reckon, at least half my plugins. But worse still, Apple have also dropped a whole load of their plugins as well. So some of the ones that I use all the time, like the guitar amp, I think they've dropped the guitar amp because I couldn't find it anywhere. So they've only got their own amp designer thing now, and the guitar amp, the basic guitar amp plugin seems to have disappeared. So I'm a little disappointed about that, because I used that a hell of a lot in an awful lot of sessions. So I'm kind of glad that they coexist side by side, and I can report that 9 hasn't broken because I've loaded X on. So
yeah, I think that's important. It will coexist. It definitely will coexist. So
I just basically was able to go, okay, this isn't going to work for me today, and I'm sure it's going to work for me fabulously in the future. But it's not an instant kind of changeover. I was sort of hoping that I would load it up and bang, I'm in there and working, and I'd be able to start using some of the new feature sets. But I actually had to hold off and go back to 9.
Right. I think, yeah, I see. But I think that's one important thing that's worth mentioning is that it will coexist. At least early reports are saying. Peter Kern wrote a kind of fairly in-depth. Actually, I was a bit disappointed that everybody's sort of all the major sites seem to have got an early look at it, apart from me. But that's because I can't keep up with the ever-changing personnel at Apple, and presumably they can't keep up with us, I guess. But anyway, I shouldn't feel too bitter and twisted about
We're
it.
too brilliant for them. That's what it is.
Yeah, well, they're too worried that we might say something not immediately 100%. I don't know, but it does sound. I mean, I have to say, from what I've seen so far, it's not a mind-blowing side of things. The 32-bit 24, the 3264-bit is going to be a bit of an issue, but there may well be some bridge, a bridge that one can install. I know that Gear Junkies tweeted asking the question. I forget the name of the actual bridge, so it might, it's not all kind of doom and gloom just yet, but I'd imagine it's going to be fairly unsupported. I mean, Dave, are your plugins going to be all right?
So I got it up now.
Ah, okay. Where should we look, Hans, while Dave answers?
On musictalk.de.
Okay.
Should go directly to the live stream window.
Ah, live stream chat logic with somebody else with you.
No, but that's the sum to my availability currently.
Okay, I think I may be able to. Can I make that? Let's have a look, see what happens here. Oh, I can sort of. No, I have to go like this and zoom it this way. So that's the screen. Oh yeah, I can see. So this is. Oh, what's happened there then? I think I just went. There we are. Oh, it seems to be throwing me out. Come back.
The stream?
No, it's all right. I think it's my poor. Okay, there you go.
Got it?
Yeah. I just because I'm zooming in. The only problem is I have to. Oh no, that's it. I'm pressing the wrong zoom key. That's my fault.
Because the first thing I tried, I don't know if you already discussed this, is we are still in the dark ages of MIDI,
Right.
minus 64 panning in one direction and plus 63. So a great wealth of 128 different.
I was
positions.
disappointed when you said that. I hadn't noticed that one yet.
Oh.
The one that I'm really worried about, and I want to make sure that they've fixed, is the fact that in Logic 9, the only way you can use any of the Apple loops and have them loop correctly and go around the right number of bars and not skip and jump is to run your sessions at 44.1. And I had sort of taken on the practice of running all my sessions at 96.24, and then I realized that actually that just completely disables any sensible functionality with Apple loops. You can't audition anything.
Let's just try it. Did you try it?
What's
I
that?
haven't had a chance to try it yet because every time I try and do anything, it starts downloading.
Well, this is Hans is doing. This is bonkers. So what we basically got is Hans is streaming his MacBook to his website. I'm capturing the streaming window on his website and restreaming it via the Sonic Podcast. This is the spirit of international collaboration.
Love it.
Absolutely. At the spur of the moment, right?
Yeah.
You're running a session at 96 now then and going to see if it loops.
That's what I'm trying to.
And then the other problem I've got is every time I load it, it says that it's going to scan all of my AU plugins, and then a whole load of my authorizations, which are on iLock, won't work. And if I click on authorize, it says I've already used this serial number, and it won't authorize it, even though I've got authorizations on my iLock. So I have to run a whole load of plugins in demo mode, and I don't understand why it would do that. They're all
And
authorized.
the GeForce synthesizers, they also don't appear.
Where?
Uh-oh, live tech support. Here, Dave's looking nervous now.
And I think I have the latest in Posca, maybe I'm making a mistake, but I haven't.
Yeah, I think you are. Because
Okay,
that one I got. I mean, we basically been getting feedback from Apple on the 64-bit betas that we've been putting out.
Okay.
And everybody's come back going, it's good. We are good to go.
Well, there we go.
Do I have to load a 64-bit plugin onto my machine now then if I want to use yours as 64-bit?
Yeah.
Is it a separate plugin? Will it do I need 2 different ones then? One for Logic 9 and one for Logic 10, and then I just switch them off in the validation manager, or how does that work?
Once it's released, it's basically what's known as a fat binary, so it's 32 and 64, so it kind of reads both.
Right.
Go and download that at some point then.
I mean,
Well, it ain't out yet.
I think the thing, I think the thing to remember about this is what we're talking about here. I mean, there is going to be a period of transition. I mean, I think for the purposes of this programming, there are going to be some finer details that definitely we're going to discover. I mean, and seeing as people have only had a chance to download them sort of since yesterday, these are the kind of things that have come up. But I mean, in terms of the general workflow and GUI.
Well, it's basically the old GUI in a way.
It's the old GUI. Well, it looks like they moved the windows around a bit.
Not much. We still have the browser window here, and
you've got the transport at the top though.
Yeah, and then you've got all this stuff here. There's the same. Everything is arranged. It looks like a new skin. I think Mark would probably agree. Yeah, it's a new skin. It's not a new.
It looks very iPad-y, and it looks very that kind of Retina display kind of.
And it's great that you say that, but because one thing that I found totally amazing is first that they throw out the old GUI of the ES2 to us in a Retina age, and it looks horrible and ugly. But what you can do is, and I have never seen it in any other program yet, a real scalability of a plugin. Can you see it? I can just pull it at the corner.
Cool. That's really cool. That's unbelievably cool, actually.
Yes, and I think that's a feature totally underestimated, because now I can exactly size it the way I want. You look 175%, and it goes in percent increments.
Ah, okay.
Okay, so I've got this, and then that's what I think is pretty good feature.
Oh, it's interesting. Definitely interesting. I mean, there's a number of other issues that came out. I mean, I looked again. I refer you to this David Earl video. It's because it really does opens up a lot of it. The synths kind of seem reasonably interesting. There's a new retro synth which seems like a kind of synth light. It's not going to give you the sort of level of control you're going to get from a dedicated instrument, but it gives you FM analog type emulation, wavetable. And there's a fourth, isn't there? I'm trying to think what it is. Can anyone help me out here?
The retro
PPG
synth.
Kind of looking like
PPG thing,
yeah.
It was a blue thing. I tried that synth out, and it actually sounds quite good.
I think the thing that I really liked about it was that I could see was again when it's used in these track stacks, which are kind of like the old folder type idea, and you can put like a bunch of them inside a track stack and then play them and split them and have them however you want, but it's controlled as a single object. So effectively you're creating like a kind of super rack of instances, and it doesn't have to be one retro synth. It could be retro synths, it could be all sorts of things, and then you bring them up. And in fact David Earl does demonstrate that pretty nicely actually. I might be able to find that if anyone is interested quickly. If I press here, I've got it written down, so just 1 second.
I don't care.
Let me find, what was it? It was synth 630, I think I'm looking for. Okay, it's done that thing to me where it's, yes, let me see if I can find that. It goes through quite a lot of this, so if I just come forward and, oops, excuse me. Retro synths, okay, this is not looking so good. Actually, 6 minutes in, aren't I? Somewhere like that.
Select multiple tracks and move them around now just by holding shift.
Here we go. I think I've got it here.
Retro synth. We got 3 retro synths going on at once here.
Right. I'll just come back a bit.
This one called Deep Ambient Stack. That's not just one instrument. It's a whole bunch of instruments. If I open that up, retro synth, we got 3 retro synths going on at once here. And all of their associated auxiliaries that are playing the effects are also within the track stack. To pack a track stack, it's really easy.
Sorry. So, yes.
I was just going to say, is this just for people who don't know how to use the environment?
Well, yeah, because the environment has always been very...
I can always do that.
Yes, I know, but the thing is it's never been simple. The environment still throws me, because I'm not programming heavily in the environment at all times. When I go back to Logic, all right, I need to figure this out because I might inherit like if you get say for instance a song from somebody else who has their system set up completely differently, like for instance they don't use the sequencer input to route to all of their instruments and they use some fancy environment routing, then it completely screws you up and you kind of like actually you got to sort of unpick these things before you can figure it out. So in some ways they've sort of simplified some of the things that have made Logic actually quite complicated for first time users, but maintained this sort of concept of allowing you to do all of this stuff as well. I don't know, what do you think, Dave? Is it, I mean, again, you haven't jumped, but I mean, to me, it does look like there are quite some good, basic workflow enhancements that are really going to kind of make a difference.
You can tell there's a convergence between the iPad and the a desktop machine. In fact, I thought weirdly one of the most interesting observations I saw was when Eric Pressing said there are no knobs now on any of the synths for cut-off and resonance. And I thought that is intriguing. So now we know that the iPad is obviously the required or the desired controller for a load of this. Obviously you can control it, but they're no longer just as simple as knobs.
No.
So yeah, I mean, there's an awful lot of things. I mean, I keep coming back to that thing that I actually argued with you about, that you were saying, there's going to be this sort of consumer level everything, and then there'll be a very, very high level and nothing in between. And of course, my big fear is that this was going to get dumbed down. I like the fact that that Logic Pro 9 and this and X can coexist, and I think that in itself is good enough not to warrant a kind of upgrade.
Yeah.
Because I don't think an awful lot of pros are going to make that jump immediately.
Not a whole operating system and all those plugins. No. I mean, it's going to be a bit of a nightmare.
No, I mean, you can imagine my day-to-day's been, generally fielding emails from people going, when does it, this, that, and that. So yeah, no, it's an interesting one, but it's not as exciting for me as.
Isn't it basically an upgrade for the GarageBand guys?
Everybody's been saying pretty much the same that I've spoken to. Yeah, it's kind of interesting.
Yeah. And what we find is that I think it's also, I talked about it today to my wife actually. I said, hey, these Apple guys are destroying the music software industry because they're pumping out this software at 170 euros.
I thought it was very interesting as well that somebody said, actually basically Logic X is just tons of free stuff. There's no really massive inventive leaps or anything.
No,
it's just free shit.
Yeah, but it's the consumerization of the professional markets. We see that in video as well, don't we? I mean, people are shooting with consumer camera, DSLRs, they're shooting movies, and they're cutting on laptops. It's happening everywhere, and it's a big and attractive market, and this is exactly what Apple is trying to do. To give that sort of ultra hobbyist that. Yeah.
Well, that's. I mean, I guess it's perfect because that's the aspiration, isn't it? It's these people. I count myself among them.
It's not really enough. It's basically very close to what happened to the video thing, I think.
Yeah. Very.
Yeah. Sort of the killing of the high-end, really.
Although I did
no update of the audio engine at all.
I did read somewhere yesterday that it is backwards compatible, though, isn't it? Right back to Logic 5.
5, yeah.
That is
actually pretty impressive.
Yeah, but
compared to what happened with Final Cut.
I mean, that's an interesting thing in itself because obviously I've used Logic since version 1, so I've got sessions from that especially with Duran, all of their stuff was done in Logic 3 and Logic 4. So whenever I do any work for them, I need to be able to load sessions which I did in 3.5. Now that means that I've got to have a version of Logic prior to 7 or 8, I can't remember which one, on my machine. So my laptop is now like a Swiss Army knife of Logics. It's got like Logic 6, 7, 8, and 6, 7, and 9 on it.
Right.
So I boot into Snow Leopard and I load all the sessions up, the 3.5 sessions, because I can't load them into 9. It just won't do it.
Right.
And then when I save them out in version 6, I think it is, then they become compatible with 9. So you have to kind of do this weird juggling act because they dropped some kind of. I think when they switched from PowerPC to Intel, they dropped a whole load of support for the earlier the way it loaded sessions earlier. But what the weirdest thing is, I got all my Atari discs and I saved all of my Notator SL stuff off on Atari discs the other day, and Logic 9 will load Notator SL songs, including the arrangements and all the patterns and everything, and it will put the song up and it just works perfectly. So why they kept the compatibility with Notator SL as a kind of a legacy going back that far, but not with Logic, it's just weird. It's just so strange.
Interesting. I'm going to have to interrupt there just purely because we now have a word from our sponsors. Because we can talk about Logic because we're all users of it for a long time, and I'm sure there'll be more to come. But I just want to say that I want to say thank you to iZotope because they are the sponsors of the show. And here is Stutter Edit, which is the thing that we're looking at basically. And Stutter Edit is an effect that you play like an instrument. It allows you to create these kind of fills and turnarounds and very sort of strange items across either buses, individual instruments, or the entire mix. Remix in real time on stage or in production studio. Cutting edge audio slicing and manipulation. Designed with Brian Transo, BT, aka BT, who's very famous for all his stutter editing. It's got practical applications because it builds fills and turnarounds and stingers for audio programs and more. You can download a free 10-day demo of Stutter Edit at iZotope.com/Stutter Edit, and that's fully functional, so you can check it out for yourselves. And of course, it wouldn't be the same if there wasn't a competition to go. But first, we're going to come to our winner of last week's competition. I did throw give us a playlist of stutter edits, of stuttery kind of tracks, and there were quite a number actually that were posted on both YouTube and Sonic, some of which were pretty obscure. I must admit, I've listened to some very obscure music over the last few days, and I was trying to find some stuttery aspects to it, but I'd like to say that the winner is a chap called Dowdag, or Cora Dave, as he posted in the Sonic Talk comments below, and he came up with DJ Rap Bad Girl, and that's BT's spoken progenitor mix. Fatboy Slim, Funk Soul Brother, yep, I can dig that, lots of that. Guns N' Roses, Welcome to the Jungle, I'm not so sure about that one, but the Knack My Sharona, I've forgotten about that track, and it's just it's just a raw piece of kind of almost new wave pop that's fabulous. And of course Bowie Changes, or should I say changes. There's a bit of stuttering, live stuttering there. So Cora Dave has won. He gets a copy of Stutter Edit, which the iZotope Fairy will bestow on his account when I've contacted him and he's given me his email address and what have you. And there is also another question, which is, of course, for another copy of Stutter Edit, which is for next week's, will be announced in next week's show. Once again, what I want is you leave your competition entries in the comments below, either on YouTube or here on the Sonic Talk posting on Sonic. And the question is, how far will you go for the perfect edit? I'm sort of thinking about maniacal obsessive sort of behavior when it comes to editing stuff, so I'm interested in those kind of stories, because maybe Stutter Edit will save your sanity in the future if you've kind of realized that perhaps spending all your days inside kind of coming up with these kind of glitch edits is going to do your head in. So how far will you go for the perfect edit? Type it below in the comments and let me know, and there'll be a winner next week. And don't forget, if you want to check it out, download a 10-day free trial, Stutter Edit, iZotope.com/Stutter Edit. Thanks very much for watching. Right, okay. So quickly, there are more things. I mean, Hans, I'd like to know if there's anything else specific that has really sort of blown your mind. I mean, I'm guessing you haven't had all that much time to check it out, like you say.
I like the virtual real drummers.
Ah, yes, the drummers.
Yeah. The one that download gigabytes and gigabytes of content if you're not careful.
Yeah.
Yes. But I like this matrix where you can decide whether your drum groove should be more complex or simpler or louder, and you can have these, as we know from GarageBand on the iPad. We can now do that on the desktop.
And it looked like you could set up, you can swap out drums, and there's other things. And the other thing that looked quite cool, this is again in this
different guys, different sets. You have a mixer. You can say how many fills you want. It's all sort of geared to the casual musician.
I like the way you said that, casual. So is that
not in a bad sense? Because if I'm sitting there and I'm trying to get I need a drum groove because I'm songwriting on the guitar, then obviously this is a very practical and very quick way to lay down something that's
it'll have some dynamics that will help guide you. And right.
Yeah, much better in having just a simple EX24 drum group that's playing along onto a MIDI. I think that's so. Although it's for the casual more, maybe, but it's a very good demoing or guidelining, or maybe in some cases even for a final. I would even dare to use that on a final recording.
The one thing that I did notice, again, that I got from this video is even if you're saying, well, I like that pattern, but I need to get it somewhere else. If you drag the pattern and move it up onto a MIDI track, it will just extract the MIDI, so you can then play your BFD or whatever it is that might be, you might require. Dave, you are a drummer. Do you feel threatened? Are you going to be contacting the Musicians Union?
Yes, asking for a ban on all software. Oh,
and
hang on a minute.
And cassettes while they're at it. Yeah.
Yes. I did say to somebody I was going to do a single on a single the other day, just so I could sell nil copies. No, that did look quite entertaining. Is that what's called Adrian?
The one that there's Adrian, there's Gavin, there's Jesse, and there's Rose, who is oops, I'm sorry, I'm looking at your screen now.
They're very large, these people.
I don't know exactly. They're
rated drummers. Who'd have thought it?
I don't know who they are exactly, but yeah, I think you get different personalities. I don't think I like that so much. The kind of so you've got the kind of almost the iTunes back. The iTunes kind of icon, so for instance, Rose has got dreads, so she might play sort of slightly funky. It's a bit derivative and condescending, but if it sounds good and it does, seem to work, although those kits do have a generic kind of quality to them that does tend to sort of stretch.
They're quite good when you click on the different drums, actually.
Okay.
They're sort of getting into the same realm, area as some of the other drum kit stuff that I've got. I thought I was playing around with it earlier on, and I was clicking on the kick drum and trying different things out. Unfortunately, that's when it started downloading tons of content.
Did it not warn you? Because that's pretty...
It did say something. No, it didn't.
Didn't say, are you sure?
No, it did say in the left-hand side, if you want to download more things, click on this button here. So I thought I'd better not click on that, because otherwise it was going to take ages doing something. But then I did click directly on one of the... I think I double-clicked on Adrian's head or something, and that was it. It was just... Because I wasn't... I never read manuals. I just go poking around, pressing things, hoping for the best, I rather like the look of... There's a guy with a Mohican with an Anarchy A in front of him, actually, in one of the drum kits, which looked quite interesting.
He might be your...
So at the risk of, overloading our monthly broadband allowance, if we have one, I'm not sure what our deal is at the moment.
But surely his samples should be lo-fi.
Well,
anti-establishment.
I've got the drum kit up now.
Huh?
I've got the drum kit up.
There we go.
He should do those fills that go... Oh, no cymbals in punk, actually.
Yeah, that's very garage band, isn't it? And then you can edit the voices on the right-hand side and what have you. Okay.
Something will come up on the left-hand side as well. If you click actually on the bass drum, I'm touching the screen now because I'm expecting it to... If you click on the bass drum, it brings something up on the left-hand side.
Yeah, you can choose. So you can swap out
bass drums.
Okay. It's interesting that what they seem to have done quite well, which, considering this it still is kind of a sort of garage bandification, we don't seem to be hostile to that, and that's what's quite interesting. But it's quite interesting how that in actuality that they've made it sort of come across, and it doesn't seem to be too of a dumbed down thing, which is quite interesting.
I mean,
in reality,
my vision for music software has always been that I end up being able to have interaction with a whole load of virtual musicians. So it's getting more and more like that. I mean, ideally, I'd like a little hologram of the drummer to pop up and for me to have a conversation with him and say, I'd like a couple of fills here and here. And I mean, that kind of artificial intelligence without the drunkenness and falling over would be brilliant.
Yeah, there are lots of gags.
Sorry, Dave,
there are lots of gags in that.
You probably don't do that part of it. But
not since Saturday, anyway.
See, I quite like the idea of making it very kind of what was Hans's phrase? Kind of consumer friendly.
Casual.
Casual.
For the casual
Because
user.
There are, present company accepted, and everybody in the chat room, and in fact, everybody who's listening to this podcast is completely accepted from this. There are some musicians who really should not be left in charge of a computer. So the more simple you can make it, the more chance you've got of getting some music out of it.
And absolutely, totally agree. I think it's sometimes we're very arrogant in the way we are, because I remember the story I told you when I went to this guy who I said he should get some Reason Essential and a cheap audio interface, and he ended up not understanding that his audio would now come out of this box and not like before out of his headphone socket connected to his stereo, So sometimes we're really far remote from and he's a good musician, he writes great songs, So there's something wrong with the industry sometimes. We're making stuff too complicated. And sometimes I get really frustrated, because in this professional music environment, I hardly find a way to trigger MIDI out.
Yeah, sometimes it can be very difficult to do that. But it is, I mean, on a more general level, then perhaps they should be commended, really, for kind of actually coming up with something that seems to somehow straddle these two, in some ways, opposites. Because, I mean, as we know, musicians can be an elitist bunch, and especially ones who don't ever actually produce any output are probably the worst kind of elitist musicians. I mean, ever. I'm not looking at you, Dave, at all when I say that. I mean, we all have produced output, so we've got some sort of a history of it. So there's something, I suppose. But people, and as we know, people get very evangelical about DAWs, and but I mean, at this price, let's not forget, upgrades aside, we're talking $200, 135 quid.
Insane.
It is kind of pretty crazy, and I guess they're trying to get people to buy Apple hardware, and that's why they're subsidizing it.
But aren't they killing the music software industry? I mean, what is the message?
How is Ableton going to compete with this? Because this is, I mean, I just tried Ableton recently.
It's different.
And then now I'm in this, and I'm not going the few things that I wanted to use Ableton for because Logic couldn't do it are things like arrangements on the fly. So I'm told I can throw markers in this, and then I can make arrangements on the fly. So if it solves that problem for it, because I've got so much investment in using this piece of software, and I know where things are, and I have to commend them on leaving all of the menus pretty much alone. So that when I click on a menu, I think, I need to do, whatever. I need to go in the view menu. I click on the view menu, and I find the same kind of stuff that always was in there. And so it's all sort of in the same place. So if I can do the things that I would have switched to Ableton for, and still do them in Logic, and still know where everything is, and still be able to drive the software, so to speak, then.
But Mark, you're not the target customer, though.
Yes, probably not.
You're not, because I think what this is perfect.
But they haven't alienated me, have they? They could so easily have alienated me and moved all the menus, like Microsoft Word. They do that every time they release a new Microsoft Word. It's unusable. So this isn't unusable. This is still usable. This still works exactly the same way.
Well, that is promising. I mean, I would like to. Before we get, I mean, there are some things that I think they missed a trick. I mean, as you've said, Non-Eric, the non-updating of the audio engine, and I think we know that they acquired Redmatica in I think it was summer last year, wasn't it? And ESX24 is sort of pretty much untouched, which I think is shocking, considering that is one of the only kind of built-in sampler instruments. I mean, they're starting to. They have
sampler instrument on the market.
I'm sorry.
It was the first sampler instrument on the market.
Yeah, and it seems to me that there's been a bit of. They lost a trick there. I mean, if they'd up there, I mean, there's still some places to go. I think.
Is there nothing from Redmatica? Is there no?
Well, not on
initial
inspection. So, I mean, what puzzles me about this is the timing of it. So, they sort of threw it out there with kind of, not really all that many people knowing, apart from people who need to, but not like a massive amount of developer kind of, here it comes, guys, you're going to need to get ready because, your plugins need to be ready, etc. Not much of that, to the wider developer community. And they seem to have chosen a massively busy, a massively dead Newsweek, because there's bugger all else out there. So this is, that's why we're all jumping on it, and everybody's doing it. Not only is it big news, but it's not being obscured by any other big news. But it seems like there's all these things that we were expecting to happen that haven't really happened, and it seems like we're talking 5 years of nearly 5 years of development.
I mean, as a pro user, you must be totally frustrated to look at the mixer and everything, all the internals being still the same, remembering all the difficulties with 7, 8, and 9 with latency compensation on the aux buses. I don't know if that's now improved. There's some deep in the old Fiverr code hidden stuff in there, I think, and a lot of great stuff put on top of it, but it's not an update for the pro user. It's not for me.
I never use any aux buses until I get right to the last mix stage, and then I might start auxing things, because it makes everything unplayable, doesn't it? As soon as you
everything just falls to pieces. Yeah. And the thing is when you're setting up, I mean, this is again another thing, because ESX24, I discovered you could create these multi-output instruments, use auxiliary setups. They're massively complicated. So you create this large kind of drum mix, which has various things happening and what have you. So you've got your kit mic'd up and processed how you want. And until recently, you couldn't actually save that and import it in again, to another. It says, like, I want to ring that whole thing as in a preset. I'm hoping it's a little bit easier to do that sort of thing in here. But again, I would have liked to have, like you say, those auxiliary things, are big issues.
The resolution on the faders is, I remember the show when they showed Logic 5, I think, and they showed or was it 4? I think it was 5. And they showed the new 32-bit automation features. And I went to the booth and I said, hey, you guys, what are you talking about? You only got 127 steps on your faders, that's nowhere near, that's even 7-bit, And they said, oh, no, it's the automation. It does, it calculates the step in between. It smoothes out the parameters. So at the end, it's 32-bit automation. I said, okay. But, when are you going to change the resolution of the fader? Oh, yeah, we're going to have 1,024 steps next update. Never happened.
No.
But when you draw automation in, you never see that number of steps. You don't see that number of divisions. And even if you do draw it in, when I want to go to things like 5.2 on the automation, it takes me forever to get it to actually go to that number. I can't. It kind of jumps to one either side of it.
Yeah, I mean, I think there are some good things in here, and but I think you're right. I mean, I think the deeper you dig, the less impressive it is for the amount of time they've had to think about it and work on it.
It's a marvelous update for what it is supposed to be. Guys who start out on an iPad, they started out in GarageBand. There's lots more people buying iPads now than Macs. So they get, oh yeah, GarageBand, okay, they try it out, and then they want to get dig a little bit deeper, and then they can just get a Mac and go up. It's an upgrade path from low end, but it's not an upgrade path for somebody who says, yeah, I love the workflow. I like everything about Logic. I'm used to the instruments. I use the effects. My sound is partly Logic, but I'd like an upgrade, maybe to remove some of the technical limitations because even in input latency compensation didn't always work.
And my guitar sound's completely based around the guitar amp in Logic, and oops, they've taken it out. Where has that gone? Why would they take it out?
So now what you're going to have to do, Mark, is run another machine and then run your guitar into that. So I'm sure you have the wherewithal for this time, but it's
it's just annoying because I really like that guitar amp, and Amp Designer, I haven't really gotten into it in any depth because I like the other one, so I just have to learn the new one.
Yeah, I guess so.
Maybe there's some compatibility that I don't know about.
Well, we can certainly try and find out that. I think, in terms of Logic, though, I think we've probably kind of covered as much as we can for a single episode. There's probably other topics I think we can get into. And I know, Dave, you threw a few in. I don't know if there's anyone specifically that you'd like to have a look at out of the list that's there. So we can...
I would hang up. I think it's
okay. Well, Non-Eric, I want to say thank you very much for that. That's what we call on the fly, sort of what's the word I'm looking for? Yeah, improvised live streaming via a variety. That was pretty impressive, actually, and it seemed to go better than when we actually had to set it up via the entire switcher. So, however it's working, I think that was cracking. So,
one last question, Dave. I'm a bit confused now. Should the Imposca and everything now work on my Logic or not? I'm confused.
Okay,
Yes,
the beta version that I sent you, which is the 64-bit, that should work.
Oh, okay. All right. Got it. Okay.
Mtron Pro and VSM, they're 64-bit released. Next one is Imposca 2 to be released, and then followed by Mini Monster.
Okay.
I just want to say,
yes.
sorry, I just want to say, Hans, you're streaming your Google Mail inbox.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, in case you wanted to know, I'm not restricted.
Let's have a close up.
No.
Somebody
Dr. Muller's.
Yeah.
Dr. Muller, Dr. Udka. Thank you very much, everybody. All right, well, thank you, Hans. Really appreciate you coming on. So we'll speak to you again soon. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. Right, so we're going to probably end up with, if Hans hangs up, I'm not sure. Oh, yeah, there we go. Then we can get back to a two-shot, which means that I've got my old school look. So all pretty good news. So, Dave, I was going to ask you, what was it you would like to look at? We've got a list of other topics, and I know you brought some up. So I'm going to, seeing as you've waited patiently.
I'd like to look at a pint of lager.
Yes, a pint of lager.
I have no preference really. I was very interested in this Poly Aftertouch keyboard.
The NVDR. Okay,
yeah.
Let's have a look at that then. That is this video right here. And it comes on in a second. Lovely, beautifully shot. I like this chord progression. This is the new NVDR Poly Aftertouch machine. It's actually a kind of Indiegogo thing at the moment. But the idea is it's a new method of Poly Aftertouch. It's not really, they call it Poly Aftertouch 2, and it doesn't use pressure. It uses something called swing, which is key swing. And you can see there each key is generating its own amount. And to me, it looks a bit like, if I come back out, it looks a bit like release rather than pressure. What do you understand it to be as? And what is it? Well, I'll let you kick in there, Dave. Oh, look, I haven't seen that shot for ages.
I don't know the technical stuff. I was reading the early, just the info that's up on Indiegogo about the swing and whatnot. It's just that I've just been badgering companies to do a Poly Aftertouch keyboard, because obviously the excuse was always, we haven't got the bandwidth with MIDI being serial and whatnot. And obviously when Firewire and USB happened, I was like, well, actually we do have it now. So, and I think there were a few kind of patent implications, and I do know that there was one particular patent that lapsed fairly recently. So although this doesn't seem to adhere to any of that, so when this kind of cropped up, I was like, oh, let's go and have a look. And the price doesn't look bad. It looks like one of those kind of, you remember the very early ARP 2600s, the grey Minis and the blue Minis? It looks like one of those keyboards at first. And I really do think that Poly Aftertouch is immensely, immensely expressive.
Yes, I would totally agree with you. And but just to sort of reiterate, I mean, essentially, so in Indiegogo, they're looking for 65k. They've got 52 days left. They've raised 4. You get the NVDR Note 25. It's a 25, a 49, and a 61 key are the items, and it's about $500. I mean, there's a special edition black one with stuff, and as far as I can understand, it's the travel. Once you've pressed the key, it's the travel between the key down and the key up that seems to be being used as the Poly Aftertouch. So it's in both directions. So it's both down and up, which actually sounds quite an interesting way. So there may well be a lot of things that you could do with it. And the other thing that was cool is at the moment it comes with a plugin that will translate that data. It's like an AU VST plugin that will translate that data into meaningful MIDI data that you can then pass on to something else that would respond to it. So, it solved that problem of having to deal with, everybody writing that kind of capability into their virtual instruments. So that I like that. That's an interesting idea. Presumably they'd want a direct line into it in the first place, right, Dave? Eventually, I suppose.
I guess so. I mean, some people have kind of worked their way around it. There was one company who did, and it was like a sort of last note priority thing that you could kind of deal with. You could put expression in there and whatnot. From our perspective, it's full poly aftertouch on the Imposca 2, and when I was using it with the Kurzweil MIDI board, it's absolutely magnificent. You can pick individual notes out within a chord and give them a bit of vibrato and stuff like that, and it's very CS80, but the Kurzweil MIDI board is old. It's a bit ragged around the edges now, and it is obscenely heavy. So the only thing that I'd seen as a kind of viable alternative is and I've forgotten the name of it, the one that folds in half. You can kind of carry it off to a gig. But again, really, really expensive. And I thought for, $500 for a 61...
that seems affordable, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I have got this, which is... the CME X key. Now this has got poly aftertouch. It's small. It looks like it's horrible to play, but actually it's really not. It's quite enjoyable to play. It does work. It's got a solid back. It doesn't bend or flex, so you can play it much better than you would sort of expect for a sort of mini type thing. And it has poly, and this is $99.
Yeah, very good.
And that's kind of interesting. And it's got these kind of, if I can hold it right, I don't think that's going to... very small travel, but it looks like I say it's going to be really awful, but it's not. And I was just wondering if you could join a few of them together and have a separate octave on each one, or whether they are planning on doing any larger ones. But I'm guessing that the fact that they put poly aftertouch in something means that whatever this patent is they must have been waiting for it too, because they make keyboards, so presumably there'll be something else coming along like that. But I agree. I mean, I'm becoming this sort of inadvertent champion of aftertouch, because I always ask about it, whether it's on a keyboard or what, because it's becoming a rarity. So I think the governor put in the chat room that or who is it? As you heard in Nick's tombstone, it will have aftertouch. A very, very long time away. That's very kind of you to say. But I'm not really. I mean, because I'm not really a player. But certainly with the analog synths that are coming out, the aftertouch on those keyboards, certainly like the Novation Bass Station 2 and the Arturia Mini Brute, it really does make quite a lot of difference to the expressivity. And I know you play the Pro Soloist. I saw that as you posted a brilliant video the other day, and that's got aftertouch as well of some kind.
Yeah, very, very early incarnation. Obviously, that's kind of all based on a pad. But again, just really simple. And when you apply that to a chord, I mean, the CS80 is kind of a dream instrument for a reason.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
Because it's very, very expressive. And like I say, when we moved, I put the Kurzweil MIDI board into storage, and at the minute I don't really have the room to get it out. And I'm like, actually, I want a keyboard built into my desk, that I can slide it out from underneath. But it's got to have poly aftertouch. And I was like, actually, this looks like a possibility. Yeah. And there's no excuse for us not having it.
Yeah, I mean, we can, we have talked about this before. I mean, there are lots of there are ways that it can be interpolated and interpreted so it could control all sorts of things. I'm just looking to see when this is actually likely to be coming. I mean, if this Kickstarter
Feb 14.
Yeah, because if the Kickstarter project isn't in for another 52 days, then it's going to be next year. So that's not going to give you an awful lot of aftertouch love until after Christmas, which is probably a bit too late for you.
Yeah, well, it might be good timing. You never know. I don't know. It'd be interesting to see, but I thought it was a very interesting. It was just interesting that somebody's actually at least trying to address that issue.
Mark, am I right in thinking that does MIDI Mode 6, or whatever it is, the guitar one, use polyphonic aftertouch for controlling anything for MIDI guitars? There's a very obscure question for a pub quiz for you.
I don't think it does.
I mean, on the guitar, obviously, I play an electric guitar, and by default, it has polyphonic aftertouch in the analog world, doesn't it? I mean, there's so much that you do to be expressive on a guitar. And how that kind of translates to MIDI is you put every single string on a different MIDI channel, and then you can bend strings individually. But in terms of, I don't know, I've never really thought about like opening filters with things, which is what you would do with a keyboard, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I must
so.
admit, I switch all Aftertouch off on my keyboard.
Yeah, well, I must. Yeah,
I mean, to be able to tell the difference between going and going.
It's interesting, isn't it?
I switch velocity off as well sometimes, or most of the time, and
just want to trigger stuff.
A lot of the people I worked with and programmed for asked me to turn velocity off, so it's a whole new world to me. That
it's interesting actually thinking about it. You know, I remember programming. You know, if there was ever there was a master keyboard that had Aftertouch, one of the first lessons going back to the Atari ST, when you only had what would turn it off because it would just clog the MIDI data flow up enormously. And you get, especially on the S1000, it would just like crash it, wouldn't it? Because it would just go, I can't handle all this data. Just leave me alone, man.
And all we were doing basically was like boom chack, or boom boom or whatever.
Yeah. Or
and that really doesn't need lots of Aftertouch floating around. And I mean,
or 27 simultaneous notes all happening on the first beat of a bar repeatedly. I guilty, my lad. Yes, triggering those loops and all of that kind of stuff.
It's not so. I mean, you know, I can see why it's important, and I've watched people who are able to play and utilize Aftertouch.
Yeah, it's more of it's a performance thing, isn't it?
It's definitely a player's thing.
But there's a thought now. Here's a thought. You know, even though anything that does have polyphonic Aftertouch on it, there should be just a button that switches it on and off quickly. Because otherwise, you've got to go in, you've got to filter it out in your MIDI, because you don't want it going into certain things because it'll just really clog it all up for timing wise. You don't want it going into your drums, for instance. And if it's your master keyboard. Now, there you go. There's a top tip.
I always forget because in Logic, where you switch that off is in song mode. It's not a preference.
Yeah, it's in a strange place.
You don't go to the MIDI preferences and just switch it off and say, I never want to see this again ever. You have to do it every time you load a new song. I suppose I could save it as part of my auto load, couldn't I? But I hadn't thought to do that. I just forget.
Yeah. And then you learn, what's all this bloody data doing here?
Oh,
yes.
I don't need that.
No, exactly. That's so yes, I think that would be a good idea because, as many of us know, it just clogs it up a bunch. Okay, well, I'm glad we got that one in. I've got to do this one for you, Dave, just purely because I want to hear this track. So, are we ready? Oh, it's the wrong one. God damn it. That probably means... here we are. I can't believe that this isn't more well known. I had to watch this all the way through because Adrian Belew is just hypnotic to watch. He's just such an amazing guitarist, as is Tony Levin. It just makes me feel like an old fart though, a little bit. I probably better stop that because it'll get us busted. But yeah, that's the Chapman Stick. There is a new Chapman Stick out, in fact, in the world. I think I have to play this, in fact. Sadly, it means I'm going to have to play that again and then just find... Hold on a minute. I'll get it to work. And then we're going to look at the next video in line, which is the reason why this topic's come up, which is this one. Which is very loud. And this is the Railboard. This is a new Chapman Stick from the Chapman people. And this is a single mono piece of...
You could take the perfect instrument,
aluminium.
Perfect fret job, the perfect setup, and freeze it.
This is what you get. And so this is the new Chapman Stick. And
it's called Railboard because it has the rails built into the one-piece aluminum beam structure. The rails are part of the board. It's simple in construction.
I'm not going to go for it because we haven't got limited time, and I just wanted to throw this in. But Dave, you were excited by this, and when I was listening back to that King Crimson stuff, I kind of remembered why I was. But when I was looking at all the videos that have happened since King Crimson, which is like 1981, of people playing Chapman Sticks, it's exactly the same palette of sounds and techniques as Tony Levin was doing there, only not quite as good.
Yeah,
explain yourself.
Well, he's the sort of master, isn't he? And that's really the conundrum. When I saw this was around at a reasonable price, I was like, I don't really get on very well with stringed instruments unless it's a piano. But when I saw this, I thought it's kind of weird because always liked the idea of being able to play a stick, but couldn't ever afford the opportunity to do so. And then I just thought, is it purely because I'd seen Mr. Levin, either with Crimson or with Gabriel playing it, and he just looks so supremely cool that maybe I'm hoping a little bit of that coolness would.
But he is the only person playing a Chapman stick who does look cool, as far as my limited research is.
Well, I thought this guy was looking quite cool in the sort of latter video. But yeah, no, there's something about it, and I think probably it's bald-headed. So it was really a kind of like, so you don't have much hair, I'm losing my hair. Rich Hilton doesn't have that much hair.
Maybe we should all play Chapman sticks.
Because I went to a pub the other day with Failed Muso, and it was like the ukulele orchestra, and I was like, well, maybe we could just kind of have a Chapman stick orchestra, and people will go, this is a cool pub.
Yeah, maybe. I suspect
maybe that's completely flawed.
But just so you know, the Railboard starts at about $1,650, which seems actually quite a reasonable price for such a kind of specific instrument. It's got very complicated electronics and custom pickups, and I think you can split the output so that it's got the bass strings or either side of the bass string. I'm not sure how it works, but so that you can do all of that stuff. Mark, have you ever played one or attempted to play one?
I have.
And how did you get on? Is it easy?
No, it's impossible. Because the left-hand thing, I mean, as a guitarist, that left-hand thing, it's like doing hammer-ons with this hand. But that whole concept of doing that the other way around as well, and then getting some kind of coordination between those two things. I'm sure if I had one for long enough and I practiced, I'm sure I could play it. But it wasn't. There's no instant gratification as a guitarist picking one up and just. I mean, you can sort of noodle around on the left hand and stuff. Of course, I think the intervals and fingering and all that stuff is slightly different as well.
Yeah,
and then
of
course you've got a whole load more strings as well.
There's some great stuff in the chat room.
Kind of have rhythm as well. And
I'm sure. Yeah,
I'm not sure I can even play in time, let alone play anything like rhythmic in time, unless I rely on some plugin or another to pull me back on the grid.
Well, now that probably work. As you're head in the chat room, which I can't switch up because my chat room client is broken as well as the chat room server. But anyway, he says instead of a free bus pass, a Chapman stick for old musicians.
It's quite, yeah, that might work. Yeah, you see, we're getting to that age, isn't it?
That's a great But some people who could, maybe could be playing them would be interested. I mean, I think the problem is that because of the hammer-on, you get this almost chorusy type effect, and it sounds like all of the strings just sound absolutely brand spanking new, and it's got this very specific sound. And I haven't seen anybody playing one and making it, mutating it and kind of doing some really mad stuff with it, apart from Tony Levin, which again is like, 30 years ago.
That is amazing. It's that long, isn't it?
It is astonishing. Well, I remember Discipline came out when I was at school, still at school. And I remember a friend of mine brought the album in and just said, check it out. And I was like, wow. And it absolutely blew my mind. And I'm a big fan of King Crimson because it's about the only prog I've ever heard that's got soul and kind of emotion and atmosphere. And it's not all about, look how fast I can play this triplet part, even though there is plenty of that in it.
Doesn't Nick Beggs play a Chapman stick?
Yes, there's some stuff with him and Howard Jones, and that was passable. I could kind of say, that was all right. But again,
he's
didn't.
He's a very, very good musician, actually.
Right. But I think it's the memory of it, Dave, because that immediately I thought Chapman stick, great. I can play some King Crimson. And that was it. And then when I play the King Crimson and listen to all these other videos that were from other artists who are, extremely accomplished and what have you, I didn't really see that there was all that much distance travelled, technique-wise and sound-wise.
Really, no, you're right. Actually, I hadn't thought about that. And in fact, it's funny because when I saw this, in my mind, immediately went back to there was a video, there was a TV show. It must be on YouTube now, but it was of Peter Gabriel recording whatever the album was with. No self-control and all that lot on it. And there's just this bit where Tony Levin kind of walks in and he's got his effects board and stuff like that, and he just plays. It sounds awesome, and I thought that's where it's from, which is probably older than 30 years.
Well, he was probably. I mean, he was probably the Chapman stick equivalent of Jordan Rudess, wasn't he? He was the man who could kind of, but he didn't. He wasn't. He's not quite so pyrotechnic, is he? He's more. It's more about the sort of feel and the groove with him, and that's.
And
I suppose.
Just look. I mean, the thing is, he's cool no matter what. When
Yeah.
he plays his music, man, he's still looking cool. And
He's a great bass player.
I was kind of hoping that Rich Hilton would be able to kind of go, "Oh, I've played one, and it's really easy to play. All you need to do is this kind of thing."
He
And I'd
probably
think,
would say that, though. He almost certainly, yeah.
Well, I'm sure
But that rhythmic element with, I'm like, I'd just like to get in front of one.
Well, maybe it can be arranged, Dave. Maybe we should. Maybe you should be the guy to review. If we get one in for review, you could review it as a complete novice.
That would be.
And supply an awful lot of disinfo. One thing I did see is actually there was a trio actually, and there was some guy who's playing drums, so it must be midifiable as well. So I can't imagine what that's like.
They're definitely midifiable because they already have a multi-thingy piezo bridge. I think multiple transducer piezo bridge. So
okay.
You can hook that into some kind of MIDI reader that takes a different channel from each string. I don't know how many strings they've got. Theoretically, definitely get a MIDI stick. Definitely.
There's some great stuff in the chat room. Chapman's stick and Dave's spear.
Dave's spear class. I was going to call my daughter. This was serious. We were going to call our daughter Broccoli.
What about asparagus?
What?
Yeah, we thought about that. Well, we thought broccoli was quite cool because there's James Bond, obviously, and it was
burning
broccoli spears. Anyway, we're just getting sidetracked.
Random. Okay, well, I think we're probably at the point now where it's time. It's a good idea to stop the show because the heat is getting unbearable in here, and so far, technically, it's managed to hold together, and I don't want to spoil that memory for any of us. So maybe we should quit while we're ahead. I want to thank everybody else. I thank Non-Eric. It was great for him to come on and jump on and give us some extra insight into Logic X, which obviously has been the lion's share, seen the lion's share of the show, but we managed to cover some other topics. So we'll say, first of all, thank you very much to Dave Spears, GeForceSoftware.com, for joining us. And your broadband seems to be much better.
Is it? Oh,
yeah.
wow.
I haven't noticed any kind of crackly audio or you breaking up or anything. So.
And picture quality reasonable.
Picture quality is it's better than Mark.
Cool. Okay.
So,
brilliant.
So yes, you've
good. That's a relief.
That's because I'm downloading all of these Logic installs. My broadband's completely clogged up.
Logic X broke the internet. That's another possibility for the time. Anyway, Mark Tinley,
actually, I just before we close, I have to say that when I was downloading it, I noticed that Apple seemed to throttle everything to 100 kilobits per second at their end. So my broadband's way faster, and it took me forever to download some of this stuff. So, I mean, jokingly saying that it's messing up my video, it probably isn't because it's downloading it so unbelievably slowly that it couldn't. Stop throttling it at your end.
Well, they probably got to, really, because, they probably do a deal with Akamai where they have to... Because, at times like this, when there's people downloading gigabytes of content, which they must be, then I think, Elbows in the chat. Well, Elbows in the chat room says I get Apple stuff real quick on 60 megabit Virgin. So maybe it's maybe not. Maybe it's your broadband people that are throttling.
It's absolutely it's throttled because it goes up to about 108 kilobits per second and it won't go any faster. And I can download things from other places which are absolutely raw. I've got 24 meg here, so it shouldn't be a problem at all.
Wow.
They've definitely put a cap on it at their end.
Put a cap on it. Right. Yeah. Logic X.
Put
a cap on it. Well, thank you very much, everybody. And don't forget, also, you can join the competition for win a copy of Stutter Edit. Download the free trial, isotope.com/Stutter Edit. I want to know, in fact, I've forgotten what the question was. What was it? The question was, yes, how far do you go for the perfect edit? Or will you go? Which is, I'm expecting to hear anecdotes of extreme kind of, just obsessional editing kind of stuff. So let's hear, and the winner, the comment that makes all of us, certainly makes me and the Isotope Fairy laugh the most or feel tears of pity, will win a copy of Stutter Edit to avoid that ever happening together. So thank you very much.
I can think of an absolutely brilliant one, but I won't say it. somebody in the chat room said Logic X as a completely new user is going to cost me €10 more than my Live 9 upgrade. That absolutely says the whole thing in a nutshell.
Well, it sort of does, but how much did Live 9 cost you? It's like €600, so that doesn't really add up.
No, the upgrade.
Yes, I know the upgrade does, but oh yes, I see what you mean. Yeah.
So they must be going from like Live 8 to 9, right?
Yeah.
So they're going to pay 129 euros for an upgrade, or they could buy a whole music production
and content
suite that will clog their broadband up forever for 139.
Well, that's an interesting thought to leave everything on, and I want to say thank you very much to everybody for joining us this week. And
you're just going to have to hang up on me.
I'm going to hang
I'll
up.
say thank you, Nick. I really enjoyed doing this, but you are going to have to hang up on me, or I will talk to you about Logic for another 2 hours.
Okay, well, maybe we could form a sub show for that, a specialist show. But thanks very much for watching. I'm going to stop recording now, so don't say anything.